What do you make of what's going on the NSC? I mean, we've seen the market decline by about 12.4% yesterday. We're seeing similar things today. Most blue chip counters have been flat or down. What do you attribute all of this to?
Basically, they're congruent of activities that are hitting on the market, basically from the economy side. When you talk of news of impending drought, news of escalating inflation, news of a ballooning government deficit, stocks that are perceived to be overvalued, considering most counters went up by 60, 80, 100% last year. So all those factors are beginning to play in the market.
All right, what we have seen is that foreigners are largely the people who are sustaining market activity. They've accounted for yesterday's turnover of 11%, but low volumes, as we said. What's needed to lift this market back to those levels we saw late last year when it was buoyantly above 4,600 points?
Basically, after the reporting season, which is what we were expecting to lift the market, honestly, after companies announcing 60% returns, 60, 70% returns, good dividends, record-breaking dividends for most counters, and the market is still not up. And honestly, I think it is now news that has to come from the economic side of the nature, from the fundamentals that run these counters that are listed. Yeah.
So you talk about the economic, macroeconomic factors. What's at play here? We know that the central bank insists on a looser monetary policy at a time when inflation is rising, and that's raised some concerns. We know that the government and authorities are quite bullish about growth being above 6% this year, and for them, all the fundamentals constitutionally and economically are sound.
They are in a tricky position because, one, they want the economy to grow. They have targets to meet. They have a vision 2030 they want to meet. So for the economy to grow, they have to follow this loose monetary policy, expansionary actually, so to speak. And we'll expect also the fiscal policy to also be expansionary. But at the same time, they are facing more of an imported inflation. But the inflation that is there is caused by the global oil prices going up. So for them, it's a tricky place. What do? Do they forgo their growth to stabilize interest rates, or do they allow interest rates and inflation to go up to a sustainable level? Because I think if it's still below 10%, I think it's sustainable. And for them, they might be able to meet their economic GDP growth target.
What about political risk factors? Reports out that the ICC has summoned leading figures in Kenya, including the finance minister come deputy prime minister. Now, we know about this particular issue around electoral violence. It's something that we were told had been priced in, but had we really considered that the ICC would go this far?
I think people had that in mind. As correctly you said, it was priced in. But I think what is also now being priced in is that most of the people that are on this list that is going to ICC are the most people that want to run for 2012 presidential elections. And we are getting close to them. According to the new constitution, the elections will be next year, August. And that's another actually a factor that is actually affecting the Kenyan market itself.
Let's talk about the gainers today. CMC, OHC, any significance really?
Not really. As you said, the volumes were thin on them. A couple of trades just took place at higher prices. But I think the highest was Crown Beja that went up by like 4%. So nothing really major on them.
Okay, we have had some other macro corporate data, for instance, coming through. The news that Precision Air is planning a listing on the Dar es Salaam Stock Exchange. For that to happen, Kenyan Airways is going to have to sell off some of its stake, reduce it to 34%. Has that had any impact on the KQ counter?
The counter moved slightly down today or basically I think on that news. But again, volumes on the counter were still thin. KQ is a counter that is a darling of also foreigners, and they're not really active on the counter today. So maybe, I guess, maybe tomorrow's trading, or as we move on and as it becomes more material, we might start seeing some effect on KQ.
I mean, related to KQ is the tourism sector. Obviously, the tourism minister telling us that earnings are up 18%, visitor figures much higher, and we've seen TPS Serena gain about 1.52%. Is this likely to continue, or should we be looking at the services and tourism sector stocks?
Yes, tourism will benefit this year as long as the European economy, the Western economy, and even the Asian economy continue to recover, and the US economy continues to create jobs and people have disposable income. Kenya is an attractive tourist destination, and especially in this case where major tourist attractions in Africa, Egypt, Tunisia, Morocco are going through a certain period of unrest. Kenya should actually take advantage of that period, and I believe the tourism sector would be a good sector to invest in. And linked to the tourism sector is KQ, because most people that fly into Kenya will use Kenya Airways.
Let's talk about the shilling, because it has really felt a bit of pressure from the US dollar, and we know that a lot of local suppliers are demanding dollars because they want to be able to afford imported fuel. The inflationary issue that we were talking about. Will speculators try to make a quick gain from this situation, do you think? There's a way you can do it, but with the level of interest rates, it becomes a bit hard to do a quick carry trade in Kenya, out of Kenya. Was at 2%, your margin of safety, if you go into a carry trade and the shilling continues to depreciate at the pace it is going, you might find yourself in a wrong situation. But I think for the banking sector, this year, a volatile shilling is good for them. Remember, in 2009, they made a killing in forex gains just because the shilling was volatile, and I believe that's the same thing that will happen this year.